Hi, I'm Shanti, the artist behind Shanti Fine Arts. In a lot of my oil pastel tutorials, in the comment section, a lot of people have asked me my experience with the water-soluble oil pastels, and since till now I had no experience with them because I was wondering, oil pastels has oil and water soluble will have water, and oil and water does not really mix together, so how is it going to work? So after a lot of similar questions, I thought let's give it a try. So I got myself this 12-piece Mungyo oil pastels which are water soluble, and I'm going to review and demonstrate them today. So let's check them out.
I got myself the 12-piece set of Mungyo Water-soluble Oil Pastels to try the product out. I typically would try to buy the smallest set to see the possibilities with the limited palette. And here you see what the 12 colors come with this box. Apart from white and black, it has a pretty decent range. It has got yellows, oranges, two different kinds of red, brown, purple, green, more or less all the colors that you would like to use in a project, and no matter what kind of project you do. And it also allows you to mix colors together. The next thing that I did is a swatch. Now the top row is a swatch just with the color itself. So I just took the colors and made a little bit of blocks of each to see how strong the pigments are. The next row I did the same swatch, and then I'm diluting it with water to see what happens when I dissolve it with water. Now you can see that when I add water, it does dissolve. It is water soluble, so it is supposed to dissolve, and it does dissolve. However, it is not like watercolor or watercolor pencils that it completely dissolves and washes out. It does leave a little bit of the pigment. So if you have made scribbling lines, the lines will not completely go away. It will leave a little bit of texture element to the surface, which is totally fine because this is supposed to be oil pastels, and oil pastels does have a bit more texture than watercolors or oil paints probably has. So yes, it is water soluble, but it is not completely dissolving like watercolors. Now you see that I have these two blocks of blue and yellow. I'm wetting each of them side by side, and then in the middle I'm trying to blend them together to see how the two colors blend and mix, and if I can mix colors in this way and make more color possibility. You can see that in the middle it is actually blending and making a nice green hue. However, you can see that the clear demarcation of the line in between the two colors is visible even after dissolving them completely and going over with the brush many times. Now I'm trying to see what happens when I just lay one color on top of other without using any water at all, and it does give you a nice new color, in this case a purple. And next I'm going to try putting the solid color on top of color added with water. So initially I added magenta, dissolved it out, and now I've added blue, and now I'm dissolving that out to see how that works out. And you can see that that gives the same purple, just a little bit lighter strength, but a completely different texture, look, and feel. So just varying the way you use the color can give you a lot of different possibilities to use it. I'm doing the same thing once again to test out if I add a little bit more pigment, what happens. And you can test out a multiple different possibilities. These are the few things that I thought of at the very beginning, and so I thought let's give them a try. Now I'm going to see and try to use the white on top of the darker colors, and I see that it does show up pretty well, which is a great sign for making highlights and all those nice stuff. Next, I'm drawing just a few flower petals. Now remember, when I'm testing a product, I do not try to make realistic art or the most beautiful art. All I'm trying to see is how well the product itself works. So what I've done here is I have laid down some of the colors, in this case yellow, orange, and brown. and laid down the pigments side by side, one on top of the other, some overlapping, some just straight pigments. And at this point, they are just straight pigments, no water added yet. And next, I'm going to strengthen some of the pigments even more, add a little bit more pigment, because in this particular um, medium, I've seen that if you add a little bit more pigment, it looks a lot better when after you add water. Now after I've added all the pigments, now I'm wetting my brush and slowly going over the areas. Obviously you have to remember that it's better to go from the lighter areas to the darker areas, or if you're going to the darker areas first, then stick to those areas and don't come into the lighter areas, because then you will make your lighter areas more muddy and just remove all the light colors that you might want to reserve. So you can see that it's dissolving very nicely. Not like watercolors, obviously it does leave marks behind and textures behind, just like oil pastels should, but it still does a very decent work. Now on one of the petals, now I'm going to do another different one, the same kind of petals, but this time I'm going to do it a little bit differently. First, what I'm doing is I'm drawing it out and laying down some pigment first with the yellow. And you can see here that I'm pushing on very little pigment and not working very hard, which is not the right method to use in this particular medium. Just deposit a lot more pigment in the very beginning. That would give you a lot more smoother, better finish in the end results. Now I wetted that surface and dissolved those yellow pigments completely so that they are nice and smooth. Now I'm going to my orange and adding a little bit of the orange pigment. So I'm doing the exactly same thing I did, drawing the exact same thing, but using a different method this time. I am dissolving each and every layer that I'm applying and then going on and adding more layers. And I personally think that this second approach works a tiny bit better than the first approach of adding all the layers first and then trying to dissolve. This distinctly shows the different layers that you have put and obviously gives a much better finish. Now I'm adding my third layer with the browns. And obviously you can add a lot more layer in between of the darks and lights and whatever is required. Like I said, this is not a finished artwork that I'm showing you how to do petals or sunflowers. I'm just trying out different methods to see the possibilities with this particular medium. Onto the first one, I'm bent back. Now that the paint is completely dry, I'm adding a few highlights with the white and doing the same with the other petal. And you can see while the paint is still wet, if you add the highlights, it does not show up as well as it shows up when it is completely dry. So whichever you want, if you want a very, very bright highlights to show up, you might let the paint dry. Now I'm going to do a little galaxy sketch here, drawing here, and try out the various different colors I have in the shade and see how they work with each other, how they dissolve, and how little pigments work with each other. Once again, this is not a typical art tutorial where I'm showing you how to paint a galaxy with Mungyo Water-soluble Oil Pastels. I am just trying to test out the possibilities with this particular medium. And obviously this is a very quick art, just like a doodle, and I'm not putting a lot of effort into it. So the end result will probably not be the most fantastic artwork I've ever produced. Definitely not be the most fantastic artwork I've ever produced. I'm just trying to use the different colors and see how the pigment strengths are, how they dissolve and work well with each other when they're put side by side, and how they blend and give new colors. So you can see that the first defect that I'm doing here is I'm not pushing in enough pigments to start with. So if you are trying to do this and trying to produce a nice completely finished artwork, then the most important thing you need to do is push enough pigment at each and every layer. So I'm not doing that. I'm just laying the colors side by side. My goal with this particular product, why I thought, okay, I'll give it a try and find out how this works out was not just because somebody asked me on social media and I got interested. Yes, that happens. Anybody asks me anything about a new art product, I'm always interested to give it a try. Yes, that definitely happened. But more importantly, since I work a lot in oil pastels and I use sometimes watercolors to give the paper a base tone and to do an underpainting with watercolors. So I thought if I add this particular oil pastel, which is water soluble, I might be able to eliminate the watercolors altogether and do the underdrawing with water soluble oil pastels and then work with the regular oil pastels and finish it off. So that was my aim, and I think that's going to work out if I try that method, and that's going to reduce the amount of work actually I do with the mixed media if I do the watercolor first. Because here each pigment strength is much more stronger than that is in case of watercolors. So in the very base layer I'll get a lot of more pigments. So if that is my goal, and in a lot of my surreal paintings where I paint galaxy skies or water where I eventually put in a lot of colors and pigments with oil pastels, I think that that's a good way to work out. So that's another possibility that you might consider if you are wanting to consider this particular art medium. So that's my doodle for the galaxy. Nothing much, but it just gave you an idea how this product works. Thank you for watching, and hope to see you soon.